You are turning 35 next Thursday. A friend has asked what you want to do for your birthday. You have said 3 times now that you do not really want to do anything. Not because you're depressed, not because nobody loves you, but because somewhere in your 20s, birthdays started to feel less like a celebration and more like a performance you did not sign up for. There is an entire population of people who politely decline their own birthdays every year. And according to psychology, they are not bitter, not antisocial, and not secretly sad. They are doing something quite specific. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear is not a lecture about self-care. It is the real reason a certain kind of adult stops wanting a cake. Let us start with what actually happens to a birthday somewhere between childhood and adulthood. When you are 8, a birthday is a pure event. You wake up different. There is a cake. There are presents. The day has magical permission to be about you. Somewhere around 13 or 14, something begins to shift. You notice for the first time that the cake is for the adults too. You notice that your reaction is being watched. You notice that there is a correct amount of gratitude to perform and that you are being quietly evaluated for it. By 20, for some people, the balance has completely tipped. The birthday is no longer a day about the birthday person. It is a social event that happens to be staged in their honor. In a well-known 2000 paper in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, the psychologists Ken Sheldon and Kasser looked at what actually made holidays and celebrations feel good to people. The strongest predictor was not gifts or food or even attention. It was a sense of autonomous engagement with close relationships. When the event felt scripted, performed, or obligated, well-being dropped, even when the event was technically a celebration of the person. Translation: a birthday that stops being yours stops being a gift. But here is where it gets interesting, because for many adults, something deeper than social fatigue is going on. You know that feeling when you blow out candles and, instead of happiness, you feel a strange pressure at the back of your chest. You cannot quite name. That has a name too. Psychologists call it mortality salience. In a foundational line of research across the 1980s and 1990s, Jeff Greenberg, Tom Pyszczynski, and Sheldon Solomon developed what is now known as terror management theory, published across journals including Psychological Review and the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. Their central finding: humans have a background awareness of mortality that occasionally, in specific triggers, rises into foreground awareness, and certain events reliably trigger it. Significant birthdays are one of the most reliable triggers. The number changing, the feeling that a year passed faster than the last one, the quiet arithmetic of how many years you might have left at this rate. Most people do not consciously think mortality when they think birthday. They think tired. They think I do not want a cake. They think I would rather be alone. Notice the pattern. The refusal of the birthday is often a refusal of the mirror it holds up. Not a refusal of celebration, exactly. A refusal of the accounting. Now, where it gets a little uncomfortable because it is more personal than most people want to admit. A significant portion of the people who refuse their birthdays are not pretending to be low maintenance. They are quietly, carefully managing disappointment. When you are a child, the people around you throw the party. When you are an adult, you usually have to plan it yourself. And somewhere between 10 and 30, many people learned a small, specific lesson. If I do not plan it, nothing happens. If I do plan it, the gap between what I hoped for and what I got sometimes hurts more than just letting the day pass. So they let the day pass. Research on expectation-based disappointment, including classic work by the Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, has consistently shown that perceived satisfaction is not really a function of what you actually receive. It is a function of what you received compared to what you expected. Birthdays are the perfect storm for this. High expectations, uneven delivery, no control over who shows up or how. If that is you, here is the reframe. You do not have a birthday problem. You have an expectation management problem that decided to take a year off. Those are very different things. And there is nothing wrong with quietly deciding to stop auditioning for your own day. And let us talk about where the whole concept of a birthday party even came from, because it is newer than people think. You can see exactly where this comes from. The modern birthday celebration, the cake, the candles, the song, the expectation of public observance is not ancient human behavior. It is surprisingly recent. The historian Howard Chudikoff documented in his 1989 book, How Old Are You?, that the intense cultural focus on specific age milestones is largely a product of the industrial era. Mass schooling, bureaucracy, and consumer capitalism all converge to make tracking age and celebrating its passage a new cultural norm. The birthday party as we know it is, in many ways, a Victorian invention, amplified by the 20th century greeting card and toy industries, which is to say, it is an expectation that was culturally installed, not a universal human need. Research in cross-cultural psychology has repeatedly shown that societies without a strong birthday culture do not report some missing sense of personal significance. People still feel loved, they still mark important points, they just do it differently. The refusal of the birthday is not, as it is sometimes framed, a failure to celebrate yourself. It can be, quietly, a refusal of a very specific cultural script that many people were never asked whether they wanted. And there is something that happens around birthdays that is quieter and more serious than most people realize. For a subset of adults, birthdays do not just feel tiring or awkward. They feel heavy in a way that is hard to name. Epidemiological researchers have been studying a phenomenon they call the birthday effect for decades. In a widely cited study in the journal Annals of Epidemiology, researchers Vladeta Ajdacic-Gross and colleagues documented that rates of mortality, including from suicide and from cardiovascular events, spike measurably on and around a person's birthday, especially for adults over 40. Similar findings have since been reported across multiple countries. This is not fate. It is what happens when an emotionally loaded day, a day of mandatory self-evaluation, collides with pre-existing vulnerability. The day amplifies whatever state the person was already carrying. Loneliness becomes louder, depression becomes sharper. The internal comparison of who I was supposed to be against who I actually am becomes, for a few hours, harder to silence. Most people do not experience this in any acute form, but the same underlying mechanism, in gentler doses, is what makes many functional, emotionally healthy adults quietly dread the day as they get older. Their life is fine. They are not in crisis. And still, the day forces an accounting their daily life allows them to avoid. If that is you, the refusal of the celebration is often not avoidance of joy. It is a very reasonable act of self-protection, a small decision not to hand the hardest day of the year an extra stage, an extra spotlight, an extra audience. Letting the day pass quietly is, for some people, the kindest thing they can do for themselves, and there is nothing immature about that. There is a weird paradox at the core of this pattern. The people who refuse to celebrate their own birthdays are very often the people who most reliably remember everyone else's. They send the card, they bake the cake, they make the reservation. They are not against celebration as such, they are just unwilling to be the subject of it. Something about being the center of attention for a day, to be celebrated simply for having existed another year, does not land for them the way it seems to land for others. This is not a flaw in the mind. It is just a particular architecture, one that is, frankly, better suited to giving a day than to receiving one, better suited to quiet acknowledgement than to public observance. So, what does all this actually mean? If you are one of those people who would rather let their birthday pass unmarked, you are not joyless. You are not broken. You are not secretly sad. You have just quietly opted out of a cultural ritual that, for whatever combination of reasons, does not serve you anymore. That is allowed. Your year still counts. Your love still counts. Your life still counts. You just do not need a candle to measure it by. The next time someone asks, "What are you doing for your birthday?" and you catch yourself apologizing for saying nothing, remember, you are not refusing joy. You are just refusing the version of it that you were handed without being asked. The candle was never the love, it was only ever the stage. If this resonated with you, please subscribe. And if you want to support these deep dives, consider hitting that join button to become a channel member. I would genuinely appreciate it.